You're listening to the Business of African Fashion podcast with Victory. This is an online community where we teach passionate entrepreneurs how to build and maintain profitable fashion businesses while connecting with other fashion entrepreneurs. Get ready to be empowered with actionable strategies that can be applied to your business today. Let's start the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Business of African Fashion podcast. I am actually doing a video recording of this episode, just like the last one. So if you're interested in seeing this episode as a video, go ahead and check out our YouTube and you'll be able to see the video portion of this podcast. I hope that you've been doing well. I hope that you are amazing wherever you are, and I'm wishing you all the very best. Today, I will be talking about why you should volunteer in fashion. So this episode came to me as a result of my experience this previous week, actually, in which something incredibly amazing happened, and I'll be sharing that as I go through the episode. But it really helped me realize the importance of volunteering in fashion, being in the fashion space, being around fashion, especially if that's something that you want to do in your future and if that's something that you're passionate about. And I decided to include in this episode kind of a bonus offering in which it's like a template. If you're thinking about reaching out to a fashion company, asking them if you can volunteer, if you can intern, it's going to be a template where you can just put in your information, and it's a guide that helps you craft the words that you will be saying to anyone in fashion, describing how passionate you are and asking for an opportunity to come in and intern or volunteer. So, quick church announcements before we jump into the episode. Please make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform that you're listening from. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, there is a plus button. Make sure that you click that so that you will become subscribed to the podcast, and you will be the first to know when a new episode drops, and you'll be automatically notified of those new episodes. It really helps the show when you subscribe. It helps other people to find the show as well. Also, give us a review. Give me a review if you really like the content, whatever you've learned so far from the podcast. I would love to hear that feedback from you. So please make sure that you are doing that as well. All right, so let's jump right into the episode. I'm going to share this story as I go through my points. Something really incredibly amazing happened this week, and that's why I believe that it's so important for you to serve in fashion. So it feels like in our generation, because of the whole Instagram entrepreneur culture, and I mean no shade to anyone who has a business on Instagram. Instagram and social media platforms are phenomenal and incredible platforms for you to use to promote your business, to promote your brand. And at the same time, it promotes this culture in which it's easy to think that becoming CEO of a company is something that can happen overnight, or something that you can just dream it up and then it happens instantly. And it's not popularized or taking into consideration that sometimes you have to serve, sometimes you have to be on an unpaid internship, sometimes you have to volunteer just to be able to get your foot in the door in order to get into some of these spaces. You know, not everyone's gonna just come in day one and become the CEO of a major company. You have to start somewhere. And so I think it's really important to serve or intern or volunteer at a fashion company, a fashion business, just anything fashion related in your community. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't matter how small it is. I think it's so important for everybody to have, especially if you're interested in fashion, which I would assume that you are if you're listening to this podcast. So it's definitely something that I encourage. And let's think about it this way. For any industry that you're trying to get into, you have to have some experience before you kind of jump out on your own and do your own thing. And let's think about like being a medical doctor, for example. Doctors first of all, it's a lot of school that they have to do, and then they have to have these programs and these periods of time when they are in the hospital and shadowing other doctors, right? So it's so important for other fields to have this. And the question is, why isn't this promoted as much in the fashion industry, right? And this is something that I think we should normalize and we should bring back into the awareness of people. Like, hey, it's fine that you want to do fashion, and it's okay for you to intern or volunteer volunteer with someone who's already doing what you want to do just to be able to get that experience. I also think it's important to volunteer or intern because it gives you perspective, right? When you're serving someone, when you're giving someone your time, it gives you so much perspective, and it also helps you learn things so that you don't repeat the same mistakes or make the same mistakes that they might have made. It's a good opportunity to have a mentor. It's a great opportunity to network with some other people in the industry without the pressure of trying to promote your own brand, right? So be a little bit more relaxed, be a little bit more just open to making friends, because I think we've all heard this, that the fashion industry seems to be pretty stuck up. Like everyone's just looking out for themselves, and it shouldn't be like that, right? Because at the very core of what fashion is, it's community. Every human being on this planet wears clothes, right? So we all wear clothes, we all love fashion in some way. So it shouldn't really be something where there's so much pressure to try to promote yourself or to make yourself something that you're not. It should be more natural. And I believe serving will give you that opportunity. You know how I said I was going to go into a story. So let me go into the story. So this week I did something really crazy. I went up to this fashion brand in my area here in Texas. I'm in the Dallas area, and I went in there and it's like, okay, boom. Went up to the door and the door was locked, but I don't even know how to say this story because it's a miracle, and this is only because of how faithful God is and the things that he drops in my heart. So he dropped in my heart that I needed to drive up to this fashion brand, drive to their office and ask for an internship, ask if they would take me on to like grab coffee, I don't know, whatever they need help with, I am willing to do. So I went up there on Monday and I was like, this is crazy. I look crazy. I don't even have my resume. But I still went up there anyway because I'm a believer, and when the Spirit says do something, I do it, right? We'll see what comes of it. So I went up to the office and then I tried to open the door and the door was locked. And then as I was trying to open the door, in that moment, there was someone behind me in a car who was trying to beckon at me. She was trying to reach me and say, hey, we're closed. I'm sorry, you may have to come back tomorrow. My mind, when I was going to the store, when I was going to the office, I was hoping to maybe meet an assistant, someone at the front desk, to ask like, hey, I know I look crazy, but I'm really interested in seeing if there's a way I can serve you. There's an internship. You don't have to pay me. Like, I just want to be around fashion, because many of you know from this podcast, I do work a day job in accounting, but fashion is my passion. So I really desire to be around fashion. So that's what I was going up there to do, my elevator pitch, my origin story, right? Because I keep talking about that on this platform. And so when the person pulled up behind me in a car, I was like, okay, this is kind of strange, but I went up to the car anyway. And guess who was inside the car? Just take a wild guess. It was the owner of the store herself. I mean, like, not an assistant, not someone at the front desk, the owner of the store herself. Like, her name, the name of the woman is the name of the brand. And I'm not going to say the brand just because there's still things that need to be worked out as far as like our arrangement. And so I just prefer not to mention that right now. But it was just so incredible. Like, the woman was right there at the exact same time that I was opening this door. And you cannot even tell me anything that's not alignment, and that's all just in the plan of God. And so I went up to this woman's car and she's like, yeah, come back tomorrow with your resume. And I'm thinking, okay, this is crazy. First of all, I didn't expect to meet her, but now she's expecting me tomorrow to come back with my resume. All of this happened last week, mind you. So this is me reporting to you almost real time after this happened. So the next day I went back, printing out my resume, and I went there and I was like, hello, introducing myself, telling her about I work in accounting, but fashion is what I really want to do. And she looked through my resume. Guess what? It turns out that the same company that I currently work for right now, this lady had worked for them before she moved over to fashion. If you're seeing the video version right now, my face is like, yeah, it's crazy. But she had worked at the same exact company. So she was asking me like, oh, why are you wanting to work in fashion if you already have a job in accounting? And I basically went on into my origin story. I mean, I didn't tell her the whole thing, but I just summarized my life and said, hey, I'm really passionate about fashion and your brand is something that I really respect. And the fact that you moved from accounting really resonates with me because I literally see myself in you and, all of this stuff. And she was like, okay, just come back tomorrow and we can discuss and we can talk about it. And this was the third time driving up to this office at this point, and I'm thinking, wow, a week ago I couldn't imagine that this opportunity would have opened up for me, but now it's something that's happening in real time, right? So on the final day I went there with some samples. She looked through my stuff and she was like, yeah, would be happy to work with you, but I'm not going to be working on any of the clothes or anything. I'm just, again, going to be an intern, grabbing coffee for them, helping them out if they need help, if they need extra help, and just just literally just being around if they need any help, right? And it's so important for me personally in the way that I see my future and my career in fashion. It's like, how else do I get my foot in the door of wanting to own a fashion business or wanting to do something in fashion if I don't serve someone first, if I don't intern first, if I don't, know someone at least in the industry? I think that these days it's too easy to think like, I'm just going to go out on my own and do it. And while that passion is great, it saves you so much time and headache to have a mentor, to have someone ahead of you that you're kind of observing and, learning from when you're stepping out and doing this entrepreneurship thing. So I really, really encourage you. Don't think that there's no one in your area. You'd be very surprised. It might just be the tailor next door in your community who makes clothes. Just go up to them and ask them, hey, can I serve you in any way? Can I help you out? You don't even have to compensate me. I just need to be around fashion, right? And then you might even find out maybe they have an internship program where they do pay you, right? But you will never know unless you step out of the boat and you find out and you try. Okay, so another reason why I believe it's important to serve or intern or volunteer in fashion before or even while you're starting your own thing is because of the perspective of empathy. So I think these days it's too easy to just feel like you can go right into the role of being the boss or being the CEO without knowing what it really feels like to be an employee. A lot of people are starting companies, a lot of people are starting businesses. And while that's great, there also should be that period where you serve, where you learn what it's like to be on the other side so you can have empathy for your employees and the people that work for you in the future. It's not news that the fashion industry is notorious for having people who are underpaid, overworked, the work conditions are not great. And I personally believe that if you serve in fashion, if you volunteer, if you do something that involves starting at the ground floor before you become the quote unquote boss, it gives you that empathy for people. You understand what they're going through. You understand what it's like to be an employee. You understand what it's like to not be the boss, basically. So it's so incredibly important to serve, just to have that perspective shift, to be able to have empathy for people. Because as African fashion entrepreneurs, we can see a lot of the things that the Western fashion industry has done wrong, and we can point fingers and we can accuse them all we want. But if we're not intentional about changing those patterns and showing up differently, we just might end up doing the exact same thing that they've done, right? So let's think about how we can shift our perspective and show up differently by serving, by knowing what it's like to be in the shoes of someone who's an employee, who makes clothes, who may not be the CEO, right? And that empathy, I think, is great to develop us into better leaders for the future. And my final point for this episode, why you should serve or intern in fashion, is that I believe interning and apprenticeship is more aligned with our African culture of learning. So in my origin story, the very first episode, if you haven't listened, I'll put a link in the show notes for you to check that episode out. I was an apprentice in Nigeria before I moved to the States for college. And most of the people who learn how to sew, who are in fashion design in Nigeria, and from what I understand, many African countries went through that apprenticeship process of serving under someone and learning under someone before they went out to do their own thing. I think it's very Western to go to a fashion school, graduate, and then start your own business. Our African culture, for the most part, is that apprenticeship experience. And let's not lose that because it's great. It's a lot more affordable, first of all, than going to like a top fashion school, and you get that hands-on experience. Also, you get to build relationships, and there's many benefits of serving. So another point of why you should serve is that this is so much more aligned with our culture and the way that we've operated and shown up in the fashion industry as Africans. To summarize, this episode is all about volunteering, serving in the fashion industry for someone who's planning to have their own fashion company, for someone who wants to do something in fashion but doesn't really know where to start or has started and needs more experience. I believe it's very, very important for you to serve, for you to volunteer in some aspects in the fashion industry before you start your own thing. The benefits are plenty. There's a lot of benefits for, volunteering, for serving. You get that mentorship. You get to network with people in the industry. You get your foot in the door, right? This could be your first start in fashion. This could be the ground floor. And speaking of the ground floor, it gives you empathy for your own employees in the future to understand their perspective. It teaches you humility. I think With entrepreneurship culture these days, it's so overrated to be like full of yourself and proud of yourself and like self-made. That's overhyped. Humility is actually very key, and it's a nice feeling to be humble. Now, I'm not saying don't be proud of your accomplishments, but I think serving keeps you humble. It helps you keep yourself in check and remember like, hey, I don't know it all. There's so much that I don't know yet, and there's so much that I have to find out. So that's also another benefit of serving. It teaches you humility, gives you resources, helps you network in the industry. You could get a mentor. And of course, apprenticeship is more aligned with the way that the African fashion culture is set up. So I hope that you have enjoyed listening to this episode or watching on YouTube. I am so excited for, the coming seasons of this episode. As you know, this is a seasonal show and we are closely getting to the end of season 1. It's been great introducing Business of African Fashion to you. I've really enjoyed all the feedback and all the responses that you've sent so far. Don't forget to fill out the community intake form in the show notes. If you're interested in being a part of the community, you'll be able to network with other African fashion entrepreneurs. You'll be able to meet other people who are passionate about fashion just like you are. And again, to have that community that you so need when you are in the fashion industry. All right, guys, I will see you all on the next episode of the Business of African Fashion podcast. Bye.